Discover how a cleaner's simple Arabic words transformed a furious millionaire in 30 seconds. Emma, a 35-year-old cleaner from Syria, stood in the midst of chaos, scrubbing the cold marble floors of a glittering skyscraper that felt more like a fortress than an office. Today, the stakes were higher than ever. It was the day she entered the lion's den of corporate America. The room buzzed with energy, voices emerging and fading like a tide, when suddenly, the currents shifted. A loud crash echoed through the sleek office space, like thunder in the city's stormy heart. Coffee splattered across the polished conference table as James, the millionaire boss with an iron grip on his empire, exploded in rage. His dark eyes flickered with fury, his face a storm cloud teetering on the brink of a tempest. "How could you let this happen?" he roared, sending employees recoiling like daisies caught in a whirlwind. Fear coiled tightly in everyone's chests, dropping heavy weights of anxiety on his shoulders already burdened by ambition. Emma watched with wide eyes, a knot twisted in her stomach. She wasn't just a witness to this chaos. She was the lifeline for her 2 children back in a cramped apartment, miles away from the glint and glamour of this high-stakes environment. But in that moment, as silence enveloped the room like fog, Emma felt something stirred deep within her. Her grandmother's voice drifted through the noise, whispered reminders about the power of kindness and the strength found in compassion. The older woman would often say, "Words can bridge worlds." Gathering her courage, Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. She barely noticed the room shifting, the air thick with tension, as the millionaire's eyes bored into her. In a soft, steady voice, she spoke to him in Arabic, a language that sounded like music, rich with emotion. "Patience brings strength," she said, her words floating through the heavy atmosphere. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to slow. James's fury flickered, curiosity laced with confusion offering a temporary reprieve from his fiery storm. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the starkness of her words settled in the air, he found himself at an unexpected crossroads, her sincerity peeling back the layers of his hardened exterior. They spoke about more than just work. They shared stories, touching on family and sacrifice, the fragile threads woven into the fabric of their lives. In that high-rise cage, 2 souls found a rhythm, an exchange that shook the foundations of what they thought they knew about ambition, responsibility, and humanity. But just as James began to wrestle with the shadows of his own values, a sharp knock at the door shattered their moment, pulling them back to the harsh reality surrounding them. The fragile connection balanced precariously on the edge of discovery as they turned toward the sound, leaving Emma's hopes and James's introspection hanging desperately in the air. Would this moment mark a shift in their lives? Would the vulnerability they shared reshape their paths? The question lingered tantalizingly, heavy with the potential for change, leaving both of them along with the stunned audience wondering what would unfold next. The door swung open, and in walked Mr. Thompson, the company's hard-nosed CFO, his face a mask of urgency. His presence sliced through the intense moment like a knife through butter, reintroducing tension to the air. He glanced between James and Emma, confusion and disbelief evident on his stern face. "James, we need to talk," Thompson barked, oblivious to the fragile camaraderie that had just begun to blossom. Emma felt her heart sink. She had unlocked a piece of the millionaire's heart, and now this intruder threatened to slam it shut again. James's eyes narrowed, shifting back to the chaos around him. "Can't this wait?" he replied, his voice still low and tense. Emma held her breath, afraid to draw any attention to herself, feeling like a ghost in a room full of living, breathing tension. "Absolutely not," Thompson pressed, biting off each word. "The investors are losing faith. We've got reports of a major breach, company secrets exposed. They want answers now." Fear rippled through Emma. She knew that at the heart of this empire were fragile families, employees just like her, working hard to put food on the table. A breach could mean layoffs, desperation, upheaval. James clenched his fists, visibly struggling. I don't care about the investors right now. I need to resolve this. He swept his hand toward Emma, frustration igniting once more. The wheels of his mind churned rapidly, and Emma could see the storms brewing in his thoughts. Sir, we can't waste time, Thompson insisted. We need to act fast, or this spirals out of control. Emma stepped forward, heart racing, desperation fueling her steps. Maybe I can help, she ventured, her voice trembling but determined. All eyes turned toward her, surprise coloring the air. Help? James echoed incredulously. And how could you possibly help us? Every moment spent fighting each other is a moment that they win, Emma replied, her courage surprising even herself. Words can affect people, just like they affected you, James. What you're feeling, the doubt and anger, it's the same feelings that will infect the team. A stunned silence enveloped the room again, thick enough to cut. Thompson's brow furrowed, skepticism oozing. Yet there was a glimmer of something else, a flicker of curiosity kindled by Emma's unexpected resolve. Let her speak, James finally snapped, his words brusque, but undeniably tinged with intrigue. He turned toward Emma, eyes eager and intense. What do you propose? Emma took a deep breath. We gather everyone address their fears. Show them that we are human, that we're in this together. She spoke quickly, desperately hoping to convince them. People don't follow a brand. They follow a leader. They follow a heart. What do you know about corporate culture? Thompson scoffed, folding his arms skeptically. I know about loss, about family, about faith. Emma shot back, her voice shaking but resolute. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. This is about people. Your people. My people. James's eyes softened for a moment, a duel raging inside of him. Would he dare to let such a valuable moment slip through his fingers? But just as James seemed ready to embrace her approach, the phone on the conference table rang, a jarring sound slicing through their fragile bond. The atmosphere sizzled with tension again. All eyes darted to it, the ringing reminding them of the stakes outside this moment. Take the call, Thompson ordered James, but an invisible wall seemed to shatter between them. Emma felt the weight of the moment shift on its axis. Would James choose to close himself off once more, returning to the fray with Thompson? Or would he take a leap into the unknown, trusting in Emma's idea to carve a new path out of chaos? As the hefty silence lingered, waiting for a decision, Emma sensed a stirring of chaos outside the boundaries of this room, a storm brewing just beyond the walls. It was clear this financial breach was only the tip of the iceberg. What lay beneath could shake the entire foundation of their lives. Would they step into the raging storm together, or let fear dictate their actions? James's hand hovered over the phone, tension radiating off him like heat from a furnace. James, Emma's voice crackled. She didn't want to lose him to the noise beyond this moment. But he didn't. He turned to her. His gaze remained fixated on the phone, wrestling with the urgent predicament presented by Thompson. The breath in the room felt electric. One decision could change everything. Just pick it up, Thompson barked, his voice biting through the thick haze of indecision. We need a plan now. But before James made any move, Emma took a step closer, her heart pounding. What will you have to say that is more important than listening to your people? The words hung in the air, silent yet deafening. James flicked his eyes toward Emma. There was something there, an acknowledgement of her courage that both intrigued and terrified him. The phone continued ringing, buzzing angrily, demanding attention. Each ring a reminder of the chaos that lurked beyond their sanctuary. Emma watched a flicker of frustration cross James's face as he clenched the receiver tighter. I have to take this, he said finally, almost as an apology, and reached for the phone. But just as his fingers brushed the glossy surface, he hesitated again. His mind was a storm, thoughts crashing against one another. Every second felt weighted. Emma felt it too. This was their moment. James. She dared to call out, her voice steady against the chaos. If you answer that call now, you bypass this moment, the chance to rally everyone and face this together. You might lose people, your company, your family might shatter. Thompson rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed by the sentimentality. We don't have that luxury. People won't care about feelings unless we keep the company afloat. We need to act fast. But what about the people? She said, desperation now lacing her tone. You're missing the point, Thompson. James can lead them, inspire them. They're scared and lost, just like us. If we don't show them we're all in this together, they'll crumble. And so will you. With what felt like an eternity of waiting, James glanced from Thompson to Emma, his eyes deep pools of conflict. In that moment, it was as if the walls were closing in. He could almost feel the weight of every employee's future resting on his decision. That Thompson's impatience seemed to reach a boiling point. We're crumbling as it is, James. Gather your team, or we're going to lose everything. But then a noise. A soft, almost imperceptible sound echoed from the corner of the room, just a whisper. Emma turned, bewildered, and saw a cleaner quietly standing just outside the conference room. The woman had been listening all along. Her brow furrowed, and she stretched her hand out, as if holding an invisible balloon. Please just say it, the cleaner whispered in Arabic, a simple phrase that sounded foreign yet filled with a deep resonance. It was just 2 words, but they felt heavy, plucking at the threads of anxiety in the air. James turned back to Emma, the spark igniting in his eyes. It was a call, a bridge built from that unexpected moment of connection. What did she say? He asked, curiosity now wrestling with urgency. Emma hesitated, glancing between the cleaner and James, her heart racing once again. They were words of reassurance, trust. A new pulse ran through James. Could this be the turning point? Trust? Thompson echoed derisively, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Trust is all we have left, Emma insisted, realizing that this moment could either spark hope or lead to devastation. The tension reached its climax. James turned to Thompson and then back to Emma, determination dawning in his eyes. Let us gather them. The door creaked open, and as if on cue, the phone rang again, its tone sharper, more urgent than before, pulling James back to the moment. Emma felt her heart drop. Would their newfound strategy work, or had they just stepped into deeper peril? The next moves mattered more than ever. James swallowed hard, his throat dry as the uncertainty hung thick in the room. The air felt heavy. It was like waiting for a storm to break. Thompson's impatience buzzed in the background, but Emma's steady gaze anchored him. It was a fleeting moment, but in that instant, all the creaking tension transformed into something electrifying. Without another thought, he crossed the room, clutching Emma's hand as if it were a lifeline. Let us do this together, he whispered, locking eyes with her. They were aligned, a rare partnership forged in uncertainty. Gather the rest, Thompson snapped abruptly, his voice sharp. Time is running out. You think this is some kind of game? James had almost forgotten Thompson's presence, but he noticed the shift in the air. Everyone's anxiety was palpable. They weren't just fighting for their company, they were fighting for each other. He walked to the door, Emma following closely behind. The moment they stepped into the broader office space, they were met with worried expressions. Employees huddled around desks, their phones glued to their ears, furrowed brows betraying the chaos outside. Listen up, James shouted, commanding attention. I know you're all scared. Hell, we're all scared. But now is the time to trust in each other. As he spoke, a wave of uncertainty rippled through the room. He could see the older employees exchange glances, the younger ones biting their lips in fear. Doubt was an insidious infection. Thompson thinks we can't afford to focus on feelings right now, James continued, raising his voice to cut through the tension. But if we don't prioritize one another, we'll lose more than just our jobs. We might lose everything that makes us who we are. We are a team. A whisper of agreement flitted through the crowd. What do you know about teamwork? Thompson scoffed, stepping forward, fists clenched. You're deluding yourself. Do you really think words and camaraderie can save us? But just then, the cleaner stood at the edge of the gathering, her hands still raised, an outsider holding the most important message. Trust, she reiterated loudly in both Arabic and English, her voice cutting through the noise. It's everything, everything. For a moment, the room fell into an uneasy silence, and James dared to meet her eyes. There was a deep well of understanding, a life behind those simple words that shone brighter than the chaos they faced. See, Emma urged, her voice unwavering. Trust is powerful. It's what will hold us together as we weather this storm. The phone continued ringing in the background, the sound shrill and urgent, but now it felt less demanding, more like an echo of their collective worry. James took a deep breath, his heart pounding in solidarity. We need to listen to one another, to fight for each other. And we can start right now. Gather the critical reports, everyone. We need data, strategy, but more importantly, we need each other. Thompson's face twisted in disbelief. You're leading them to disaster. But James felt a shift, a renewed determination in the air. Heads began to nod reluctantly, and employees started to push back their chairs, rising with vigor. The noise around him began to fade. For the first time, he could see the glimmer of hope through the uncertainty. As they rallied the team, an urgent voice called from the back of the room. What if the company is already too far gone? What if trust isn't enough? Instantly, the mood darkened again, like a shadow creeping back in. Could they even trust the very organization that served as their livelihood? James's heart raced anew. They had to face not just the external chaos, but the internal fears as well. Would their efforts spiral into futility? With that question hanging in the air, a chill ran through the room, a grim reevaluation of their reality. The crowd began to stir nervously, anticipation thrumming through the atmosphere. Would they stand united, or would fear tear them apart? As James turned, the phone's piercing ring echoed again, sharper and more desperate than before, and he knew they were running out of time. What awaited them on the other side of this chilling moment? The tension in the room thickened as James's words hung in the air. He could feel the weight of every pair of eyes watching him, a silent question pressing against their collective chest. Were they really going to come together? What if we all end up on the chopping block? Someone threw out, voice trembling. The question cut deep. James looked over at Emma, her expression fierce yet vulnerable. That's exactly why we have to fight, not just for our jobs, but for each other. He could see a flicker of fear in her eyes mirrored back in the crowd before him. Suddenly, the phone rang again, the sound jarring and frantic. It sliced through the charged silence, and a shiver snaked down his spine. Who would be calling now? Answer it. We need to know what's going on. Thompson barked, impatience crackling in his voice like dry wood ready to ignite. James hesitated. We need a strategy. We can't just react blindly. Thompson's stare hardened. You've had your chance with your inspiring little speech. Now let us act. Against his better judgment, James stepped toward the ringing phone. It felt monumental, like opening a door to a truth they might not want to face. He reached for the receiver, the cold plastic stinging his fingers. Just as he lifted it to his ear, the call disconnected with a sharp beep. A collective gasp filled the room. The swell of dread enveloped them. Who had just hung up? Brilliant, Thompson sneered. You've managed to make us look even weaker. James could almost feel the room's collective heartbeat. It quickened, rising with frustration. No, we won't lose hope, we just need to regroup. But his words fell flat, and he sensed that resolve waver like the dimming light above them. Maybe we should just abandon ship, someone muttered from the back, the doubt spreading like wildfire. We can't trust each other if we can't trust this company. The murmurs grew louder, drowning out the hope James fought to nurture. No. Emma's voice pierced through the noise, filled with a fierce passion. We won't let this company define us. We build this team. It's our responsibility to hold it together. Together, they stood stubborn against the tide of negativity. The cleaner, still lingering at the edges, observed them with a calm, knowing gaze. Suddenly, she stepped forward again. Even a ship caught in a storm holds its course when the crew trusts one another, she said quietly, her accent lending weight to her words. You must find your trust and let it guide you. James felt a flicker of hope rekindle. They could do this. Everyone. He called out again, this time more forcefully. Let us break up into groups. Analyze what we have and how we can pivot. If there's a way out, we'll find it together. With a mix of reluctance and resolve, employees began to move. Their uncertainty still danced in the air, but James saw them trying. It wasn't much, but it was a start, trust being rebuilt, piece by piece. But just as he felt the momentum shift, a loud crash resonated from the office entrance, rattling everyone back to their overwhelming fears. What was that? A voice cried out, panic lacing the words. All heads turned towards the doorway, dread pooling in their stomachs. Then came the unmistakable sound of raised voices, shouts echoing ominously from just out of sight. James's heart raced. What were they facing next? They were on the brink of unity, yet it all felt like glass balancing on the edge of a knife. He clenched his fists, torn between the fear of what lay ahead and hoping he was right to trust in their resolve. The tension hung thick once more as he tried to visualize the chaos unfolding outside. Who or what awaited them on the other side of this stormy night? The room pulsed with a new fear as the shouting intensified. James shot a glance at Emma, her eyes wide, reflecting the panic gripping the group. "What is happening out there?" he whispered, as if the words might somehow bring clarity as if an answer. The office door swung open with a jarring thud. A figure stood silhouetted in the entrance, blocking out the flickering overhead light. Shadowy and uncertain, it took a moment for James to process who it was. "Get back, everyone!" Thompson shouted, his instinct kicking in. He pushed forward, stepping protectively in front of the group, his body coiling tight with tension. "Don't!" James rushed to stop him, his heart pounding. "We need to see." Just as he spoke, the figure stepped into the light. It was Pete, the head of security, his uniform slightly rumpled but his face betraying no hint of calm. He looked shaken, as if he had just run a marathon. "Pete, what is going on?" James demanded, the urgency clawing at him. "There's been a break-in," Pete said, breathless. "At the server room. They're taking everything." "We need to." A loud crash echoed from deeper inside the building, interrupting him. It echoed through the tight space like a gunshot. The fear in the room morphed into desperation as everyone shifted uneasily, glancing at one another. Where was their strength now? "Stay here," Thompson ordered, his voice booming again. "We're not equipped to handle this. We can't get swept up in a fight. What do you suggest we do?" "Sit and wait." Emma's voice rose above the clamor, fiercer than before. "That doesn't sound like a plan to me." James felt his chest tighten. The clamor of voices faded in and out, blending into chaotic white noise. They were at a crossroads. Out there was a threat, but in here, unity felt more fragile than ever. "Everyone listen." James cut through the din, giving life to the words that had been swirling in his mind. "We can't let fear drive us apart. We need to decide now. Do we stand together, or do we fall? We should escape." Someone shouted defiantly, scanning for exits. "What if they come here?" "No," James yelled, desperation in his tone. "We're stronger together. If we scatter, we leave each other behind." The clamor resumed as anxiety ripped through the group, their faces a patchwork of terror and uncertainty. In that moment, another shout pierced through this one, more panicked, more desperate. "Help! Help us!" It was a woman's voice, faint and trembling, but it lingered like a ghost. It seemed to wrap around them, weaving deeper into the fabric of their fear. The air grew heavy with dread, hearts racing. James stepped forward, the fire inside igniting. "That sounds like someone in danger. We have to go. Are you out of your mind?" Thompson erupted, fists clenched. "You're talking about diving into chaos. It could be a trap, or it could be someone who needs us." James snapped back, caught between anger and the instinct to lead. "What if it's a distraction?" Emma chimed in anxiously, uncertainty flickering in her gaze. "Perhaps." A quieter voice from the back crept into the conversation. It was the cleaner, returning her piercing gaze to the fray. "It's in trusting those who call for you that you find the true strength in your hearts." James locked eyes with her, something unspoken passing between them. They were at a precipice, every heartbeat echoing the weight of the choice before them. The voices continued to swirl, growing louder, more demanding. Should they act? Defy their fears? Or protect themselves? "Look," Pete suddenly said, pointing toward the doorway. "They're coming." And just like that, the moment fractured. In a heartbeat, everything shifted. The atmosphere darkened, tension cracking like charged air before a storm. What would they choose? A united front or to crumble under fear? James felt reality closing on him. They were running out of time. Everyone decide now. Fight or flight. Outside, the chaos loomed ever closer, and the air grew thick with uncertainty. He held his breath, waiting for the choice that could define their fate. The moment hung in the air like a thick fog of anticipation. Everyone looked at each other, faces twisted with fear and uncertainty. It felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for a decision that lacked clarity. "Fight or flight?" James echoed, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to stick together." The heat of that decision surged through him, alongside the pounding of his heart. Seconds crawled by, and then Thompson stepped forward, his jaw set tight. "All right," he said reluctantly, We move as a group. If we're going to do this, we do it together. The crowd around him mumbled in agreement, the tide subtly shifting. A distraction or not. We have to find out what's going on, Emma asserted. That voice, it was real. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of determination and dread, an echo of resolve that rippled across the group. James nodded, feeling the newfound strength solidifying their bond. Then let us make it count. With one last glance at Pete, who nodded in hesitant compliance, they moved as one, crossing the threshold from safety into chaos. Darkness swallowed them as they stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The once familiar office environment transformed into a labyrinth of dread. Flickering lights overhead cast uneasy shadows, each one narrowing the space until it felt like closing walls. Stay close, Thompson commanded, leading the way with an unwavering hand on a nearby wall, feeling for any sign of disturbance. Suddenly, another crash rang out, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Everyone froze, senses heightened, heartbeats amplified. Go, James urged, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he propelled himself forward, instinctively taking the lead. They sprinted toward the source of the noise, footsteps echoing like thunder in the oppressive silence. They rounded the corner. They caught sight of a grim scene unfolding before them. A group of masked intruders hovered over the server equipment scattered in disarray on the floor. Shouts mixed with threats filled the air, the scent of panic palpable. Get her! One of the masked figures bellowed, pointing toward an office area. A woman, frantic and disoriented, stumbled backward, her eyes wide with terror. Realizing now that the distressed voice they'd heard moments before belonged to her, fear clutched at James's throat. We can't just leave her, he shouted, pulling at Thompson's arm. We need a plan, Thompson barked, glancing around for a weapon or distraction. Time is running out, Emma whispered urgently, her face pale, yet determined. We can't wait. We have to act now. Without waiting for an answer, James took a deep breath and said, I'll create a diversion. You have to get her out. The silence that followed felt electric, a stillness filled with unsteady breaths. Are you out of your mind? Pete hissed, wide-eyed. You can't just rush in. It's dangerous. It's dangerous standing here. James snapped back, his chest burning with urgency and fear. He could see it in the woman's face, the cold realization of impending doom if they didn't act fast. Then let us go? Emma yelled, her voice cutting through the moment like a blade. James sprinted forward. His legs carried him with a clarity born of desperation. He dove into the action, grabbing the nearest object, a metal chair, and hurled it into the air. It clanged against a wall, the sound raking through the chaos. Over here, he shouted, drawing attention away from the woman. The intruders whipped around, and for a split second, every eye was off her. It was a small opening, but it could be everything. Now, Thompson shouted, urging the others forward. The group surged like a tidal wave, pulling the terrified woman to safety behind them. Fear paled against the flames of hope ignited by their choice. But just as they turned to retreat, heavy boot falls thundered behind them, a garbled command forcefully obscured by rising chaos. Back to the room, Thompson yelled, his voice shaking with urgency, but it was too late. The door at the end of the hall burst open, silhouetting dark figures, weapons glinting ominously under the erratic lights. The tightening grip of panic clawed at their throats as they realized they were out of options. What is happening? Emma gasped, her breath quickening. James felt the weight of their choices heavy in the air. Was this chaos the price of standing united? They're trapping us, Pete shouted, his face paling as reality set in. As the world around them exploded into action, James's mind raced. They had to move, had to fight, had to survive. But would they? In the heart of the turmoil, a chilling truth settled upon them. The choices they made now would define not just their fate, but the very fabric of trust they had forged in the face of fear. Gather, Thompson roared, pushing them toward an exit. And as shadows descended, James knew they were on the brink of something monumental. Would they become warriors in that moment of chaos, or would they fall into darkness? Thompson's shout echoed off the walls, a desperate rallying cry amid the chaos. As the shadows advanced, James felt his heart hammering in his chest, electric with fear, yet strangely emboldened. They pushed forward, minds racing, calculating their next move in a game where the stakes could not be higher. Left, Thompson barked, gesturing toward a narrow pathway that veered off from the main hall. The group squeezed through, the walls feeling more like a vice than a passage to safety. Each footfall seemed to resonate with an urgency that made the air thick and suffocating. "Is everyone with us?" Emma's voice, although steady, wavered not from her courage but the uncertainty hanging in the air. She held the woman's hand, gripping it tight, like a lifeline. "We can't lose anyone else," Pete added, his eyes darting around for any sign of danger. They moved onward, the faint sound of shouting behind them echoing like an ominous reminder of the gravity of their situation. James risked a glance back. Two figures pursued them, adrenaline-fueled determination etched across their masked faces. "Faster," James urged, pushing through the growing sense of inevitability. Breathing was harder, each inhalation filled with sharp edges of panic. But ahead, a dim light flickered, a glimpse of hope piercing through the despair. "Here," Thompson called, as they stumbled into a storage room cluttered with boxes of old supplies. "We can hide here for a moment." They piled inside, the air heavy with dust and wrapped in the smell of old paper and mildew. The woman, still shaking, fell against the wall, her breath quickening into short gasps. "It's okay," Emma whispered soothingly, but her own fear was bleeding through the cracks of her voice. Outside, the thud of heavy boots grew closer. James pressed his ear against the door. His heart raced, every thump from outside mirroring the dread simmering in his chest. "What if they find us?" The woman croaked, her eyes glistening with tears. "We can't let that happen," Thompson replied, sounding more authoritative than he felt. "We've come too far." But James felt the weight of doubt loom like a shadow over them. They could only hide for so long. They needed an exit strategy. Outnumbered and underprepared, the reality of their choices bore down like a suffocating weight. Suddenly, faint voices filtered through the door. "They went this way. Check every room." The urgency in the intruder's commands set off a torrent of anxiety. James clenched his fists, channeling his frustration into a spin of ideas. "We can't just sit here," he said urgently. "I have an idea." The others turned to him, wary yet listening. "We've got to make sound draw them away. Emma, you're fast. If you run down that hallway and make some noise, they might follow you. We'll slip out behind them while they're distracted." "What? No way," Pete interjected, his voice rising in protest. "That's insane. We could lose you." "It's a risk we need to take," James countered. "Or we stay stuck here and wait for them to find us." The weight of arguments hung heavy. Thompson rubbed his chin, weighing the reality of their options. They could hear footsteps approaching, heavier now, more determined. "I'll do it," Emma said with unexpected resolve. "If we stay together, we'll just get caught." Her words cut through the atmosphere like a sharp blade, piercing through their dread. "Okay," Thompson conceded, "but you need to be smart about it. Get far enough to draw them away, but come back to the main exit we just used. We'll wait until they leave before we make our move." "On three," James said, a sense of unity returning, if only for a moment. "1, 2, 3. Emma burst into action, darting toward the door. The last glimpse James caught of her was filled with a mix of fear and determination. "Now," Thompson said, pushing off the wall and heading in the opposite direction as James followed, his heart pounding with trepidation. As the echoes of Emma's footsteps began to fade, they waited, tension stretched tight. The door creaked slightly, shadows shifting just outside. Would they slip through, unnoticed? Or was this the moment that would seal their fate? James held his breath, every second feeling like a lifetime. The future hung delicately, suspended in that moment. And then, the unmistakable sound of a loud roar echoed from down the hall, followed by a scuffle of feet. Was it Emma, or had their plan just unraveled? The roar echoed, reverberating through the hallway with such ferocity that it rattled the walls. Thompson's face twisted into a mix of resolve and sheer terror, staring at the door they had just slipped behind. James could feel the tension in the air sharp enough to cut, and it was only getting thicker. Did that come from Emma? He whispered, panic clawing at his throat. No way of knowing. Thompson hissed back, clenched fists trembling by his sides. Outside, chaos erupted. Footsteps pattered like an advancing storm, amplified by the urgency of panicked voices. The figures of their pursuers were silhouetted against the far edge of the flickering hallway light. James imagined the masked faces, faces that saw only prey. "Stay quiet," Thompson instructed, lowering himself into an almost crouched position. They listened intently, breaths held, hearts pounding as the shouts grew ever closer. "Find her. She can't be far." One of the pursuers barked, followed by laughter that sent a chill down James' spine. "I can't sit here," Pete said, twitching with nerves. "Do you have a better idea?" Thompson shot back, but the fear in his eyes betrayed his authority. The air was thick with dread, like a marionette tangled in its own strings. James's mind raced. He needed a distraction, a way to buy them more time. "If we can make some noise, move something around to throw them off. Keep them guessing," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Right. Like what?" "We've got nothing in here but junk," Pete exclaimed, throwing his arms up in despair. Then, an idea flickered. "The boxes scattered throughout the room, they could use them. We tip a few over. If they think we're in another part of the building." Thompson's eyes lit up, as if a spark had ignited. "Let us do it." They began to stack the boxes carefully, their hands trembling, barely making a sound. The rustle of aged paper and the thump of cardboard was muffled under the relentless thuds of the approaching intruders. Out in the hallway, shouts intensified. "I swear I heard her, there's something here." Adrenaline surged as they piled one last box on top, teetering precariously. "Now," Thompson whispered fiercely, and with a swift kick, they sent it crashing to the ground. The sound reverberated through the hall like an alarm. "Go, go, go," Thompson whispered urgently. They bolted toward a side door, their hearts racing with every step. James glanced back. Two shadowy figures sprinted toward the source of the noise. They barely had a moment's reprieve, sprinting down the narrow hallway, uncertainty trailing behind them. "Quick! This way!" Thompson shouted, veering toward a door at the end as James caught a glimpse of the exit sign glowing faintly beyond the doorway. But then, a new sound came from that direction, a low rumble, like a growl, echoing darkness. It felt wrong. Wrong enough that James hesitated, every instinct screaming that something sinister lay ahead. "What is that?" Emma's voice crept back into his mind. Was she somewhere near? Had she made it? They pressed through the doorway, emerging into a dimly lit room. Grime and decay breathed life into the walls, shadows dancing like forgotten memories. Just then, the door behind them slammed shut with a bone-rattling thud. James spun to face Thompson, confusion written on his face. "What the hell was that?" "It wasn't just a sound," Thompson muttered, dread creeping in. It felt. And then, suddenly, a chilling realization coursed through James. The growl escalated again, shifting atmospheres, and the darkness seemed to pulse, alive with intent. "I think we just walked into something much worse," Pete breathed, eyes widening as they realized they were not alone. Out of the darkness, a deeper growl filled the air. A shadow detached itself from the wall, a monstrous figure slithering toward them in predatory silence. James felt his breath hitch, horror wrapping around him. There would be no escape this time unless they faced whatever haunted this dark place head-on. What force waited just out of sight? Was it too late to turn back? The air grew heavy with anticipation, an avalanche of dread cascading over them as they stood on the edge of a revelation that would alter everything. The monster-esque growl echoed ominously through the small room, sending prickles of terror skimming along James's spine. He turned to Thompson and Pete, their eyes wide with shock. The shadows seemed to tighten around them, morphing into a thick curtain that could swallow them whole. "Stay quiet," Thompson muttered, his voice barely a breath. They took a step back, instinctively pressing themselves against the cold, damp wall behind them. Something shifted in the dark, a glint of movement that made James's stomach drop. "What in the world?" he began, but before he could finish, a figure lunged into the dim light, a huge, snarling beast, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. "I can't believe this is happening," Pete whispered, panic lacing his words like poison. He glanced toward the exit behind them, his thoughts clearly racing. But Thompson stood firm, his eyes narrowing on the creature. "We can't let it trap us. We need to make our move when it shifts," he urged, jaw set tight. The beast prowled closer, its rancid breath mixing with the staleness of the room. It crouched low, its muscles rippling like a coil ready to snap. Fear wrestled within James. Was this the true enemy they were meant to face, or a terrifying distraction from their fight against the corporate vultures? Now, Thompson said suddenly, and they charged toward the nearest door. James's heart hammered in his chest as adrenaline coursed through him like wildfire. They burst into the hallway that seemed so familiar yet fraught with dread. As they sprinted down, the shouts of the intruders trailing off, they felt a renewed sense of hope push against the fear still thick in the air. They needed to regroup, to find Emma, to unite against whatever darkness lay ahead. "Where do we go?" Pete yelled, his voice rising with urgency. The fear hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "We need to find her and get to the roof," Thompson yelled back, determination lighting a fire in his voice. They turned the corner, reckless urgency driving them. The dim lights flickered, shadows stretching and twisting like sinister fingers reaching for their souls. "Did you hear that?" James exclaimed as they ran. He stopped abruptly at the sound of a door slamming somewhere behind them, a scream piercing through the chaos amidst the growing cacophony. "Emma!" James shouted, instinct pulling him back toward that haunting sound. Thompson gripped his arm tightly. "What are you doing? That could be a trap." But James had already made up his mind. "She needs us. We can't abandon her." James broke free from Thompson's grip and bolted back, the adrenaline fueling his moves. "Come on, let us find her." Thompson cursed under his breath, but followed, a reluctant ally in the heat of the moment. They reached the door that led to the supply closet, where he heard Emma's voice. Desperation clawed at his chest as he pushed the door open. Inside, Emma was cornered, her back pressed against the old shelves, the previously joyful spark in her eyes replaced by fear. Her breathing was quick, and she turned sharply at the sound of the door scraping against the floor. "James!" she gasped, relief flooding her face. "Emma, are you all right?" He rushed to her side, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. "Not much longer," I heard their voices. "They're looking for me," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Where's the way out?" "Through that side door, but it's blocked. There are too many of them out there." She gestured frantically toward the interior of the closet. "Then we need to create a distraction." Inspiration struck, an old fire of determination sparking to life. "Distract them? How?" Emma looked at him, her eyes wide with concern. "Make some noise, anything." He grabbed a couple of old boxes, throwing them across the room with a loud crash. The sound echoed, the chaos outside pausing for a moment, curiosity replacing urgency. Emma and Thompson exchanged quick glances, hearts pounding. "Now!" James shouted. They rushed toward the door. As they busted through, the scene outside unfolded wildly in front of them. Employees scattered, their faces masks of fear as the intruders roamed, searching, hunting. "Go!" Thompson yelled, leading the way. The fear still clutched at James's chest, but now he felt emboldened by Emma's gasp of strength, by their unity forged in this trying moment. They sprinted toward a staircase, the muted sounds of chaos dimming behind them, but he could feel the weight of fear still heavy on their backs. "Breathe," he urged under his breath. Knowing they could not let the beast of anxiety devour them again, they pushed through the door at the end of the hallway. Sunlight burst through the opening, illuminating their path toward the rooftop. It felt like freedom, a spark of hope in the darkness. They stumbled out onto the roof, the wind whipping around them. But before they could catch their breath, the sound of heavy footsteps hit hard behind them. "What now?" Emma shouted, panic creeping in again. "No more running," James growled, his voice steadier now. "We stand together, like we always have." Thompson nodded sharply, determination in his eyes. "We face this head on." James turned to their beleaguered team. "Whoever is out there, this is about us. We aren't just employees. We are family. Together, we defy whoever wants to push us down." And in that moment, a roar of agreement swelled from the crowd that had followed them up to the rooftop. What once felt like chaos in their hearts had shifted to something electric, a spine-tingling enthusiasm, a movement fueled by trust and loyalty. And then another crash echoed across the rooftop, like a thunderbolt crashing through the static. The intruders had found them, weapons glinting against the sun's rays as they emerged through the door. "Is this what you want?" shouted a voice from the other side. "You can't win. We'll take everything from you." "Not without a fight," James roared back, fire igniting in his veins. The million-dollar empire belonged to them, the fighters united against the chaos. Together, conquer the storm. Emma screamed, raising her hands into the wind. For trust, for hope. James, Thompson, and everyone else echoed her battle cry, charging forward as one, a coalition against the trials they faced. The tension snapped, and a wave of determination washed over them. They faced their fears, relentless against the tide. This was not just about survival. This was about the bonds of trust they had built even in the darkest of times. What is it going to be? James stood at the forefront, ready to fight alongside his team, tearing the fabric of fear back to reveal hope. They were no longer just employees of a company. They were an unstoppable force of unity. And as they charged ahead, one singular thought ignited in their hearts: the storm may rage, but together, they would weather it, stronger on the other side. Now, if you've made it this far, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss out on the next exclusive tales that are about to unfold. Smash that like button now to show your support and feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. And for the love of all things exciting, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. The journey continues, and you don't want to be left out.